Hello friends, welcome to my channel IFRS World. I am Chandni Gupta and I help you understand IFRS through my doodly videos and simplified notes. In this video, we will learn IFRS 16, that is on leases. This standard is made effective for reporting periods beginning on or after 1st January 2019 and can be early adopted along with IFRS 15 on revenues. First of all, we need to find out if a contract contains a lease or not. Lease, by definition, means a contract that conveys a right to control the use of an identified asset for a period of time in exchange for some consideration. As in this scene, you can see two parties have entered into a contract wherein the supplier has given to the customer a right to control the use of this vending machine, which is the identified asset, and customer in return gives consideration to the supplier. That implies this contract contains a lease, and consequently these parties become lessor and lessee respectively. Now, how to find out if there is an identified asset? An asset is generally explicitly specified in the contract, which contains all the specifications of the asset, such as its brand, color, size, location, etc. However, there could be cases where the asset is implicitly specified. For example, the supplier has only one type of vending machine, or when the vending machine is still under construction but it will be made available when the use starts. So once we have an identified asset, we need to make sure that the supplier or lessor does not have substantive rights to substitute that asset with an alternate asset. For example, initially he gave this white vending machine. Next year he took that one and substituted it with a red one. And then later on he gave a smaller vending machine. He can't be substituting the asset identified in the contract. In many cases, it is not generally feasible for suppliers to substitute a heavy asset. Therefore, for each and every lease component, we need to assess if his rights are substantive. That is, he has the practical ability to do so. It comes when the customer or the lessee cannot prevent him and he has the alternative asset readily available, and doing so is economically beneficial for him. As in the cases where the asset is located in the lessee's premises, the cost of moving assets from here and there would be pretty much higher than the benefits. Therefore, just having rights is not enough. They must be practically exercisable throughout the period of use. Now, if the contract says that in case the asset needs to be repaired or some maintenance work is required, then the supplier or lessor will replace the asset. In such a case, the replacement does not imply that the lessor has substantive rights to substitute the asset. So now, if the lessee cannot readily determine whether the lessor has substantive rights or not, because of many reasons, like she is unable to assess the practical ability of the lessor, then she shall presume that the supplier's rights are not substantive. Now, once we have our identified asset where the supplier or lessor does not have a substantive right to substitute, we move on to assess if the lessee or customer gets a right to control the use of the identified asset, that is, the vending machine in our case. Right to control the use comes when the lessee has right to obtain substantially all the economic benefits from the use of that vending machine, and she has a right to direct the use of that vending machine. These rights must be valid throughout the period of use. Now, economic benefits could be derived from using, holding, or subleasing the asset, and the benefits include those derived from its primary output as well as byproducts or any other benefits for that matter. What if both the parties have agreed to a revenue share model wherein the lessee has to share cash flows derived from using the vending machine with the lessor on an agreed ratio? Does that mean the lessee has not derived all the economic benefits and lessor has obtained partial benefits? The answer is no, because the lessee has used the asset to obtain cash flows which he shares with the lessor as a consideration for giving her the right to use that asset. Therefore, even those cash flows will be counted as economic benefits derived by the lessee from the use of the asset. Now, along with having a right to obtain economic benefits, lessee must have the right to direct the use of that asset throughout the period of use. If the lessee has a decision making right on how and for what purpose the asset is used, or the manner and purpose is predetermined, and the lessor has no right to change the operating instructions, or the lessee herself has designed the asset, then we can say she has the right to direct the use. All these rights will remain valid even if the lessor restricts the use of asset or defines the scope of a contract, as these restrictions would primarily be in the nature of protective rights through which the supplier can protect his rights, his interest, or its personal. But these rights do not restrict the lessee's right to control the use of that asset. In any case, while assessing the rights of lessee to control the use of asset, we need to keep in mind the scope of lease. If she can derive benefits within the defined scope of lease, then she has got all the rights needed. So finally, we have our identified asset on which the lessor does not have substantive rights to substitute. Our lessee has right to obtain substantially all economic benefits within the defined scope, and she has the right to direct the use. A combination of all these imply that contract contains a lease. But remember, these rights must be valid throughout the period of use. If she has the rights only for a portion of period, then contract contains lease for that limited term only.